gives a summary then of the different kinds of things that are covered in this report. I mean, I will like to state at the end, and I kind of mentioned this throughout what I was saying, is that, I mean, there are a tremendous number of tools and services out there. I mean, the main issue is that they're not typically ready to use right out of the box or to just plug and play with all other different services. I mean, the amount of effort it takes to just combine these services, glue them together, and get what you need is perhaps as significant as developing those individual services as well. So, I mean, it's very important, the development of these individual services, because it gives a good starting point, and otherwise, you know, prevents even much more or greater. But, I mean, in whatever is done, you know, the amount of work just gluing components together and making the system work as you need is an actual tremendous amount of energy. And, you know, creating, say, generalized platforms that have some general services for a community of users, I would probably say typically, you know, it's going to be more difficult in that the services are still, you know, they're not going to do entirely what that group of users use, and they're still going to be adding things on. But I think there's still a lot of value there, because having some base services available gives more building blocks that can be used by different communities and different projects. So, I mean, that's, I guess, I mean, what I have to say so far. So if there's any other questions or comments that people would like me to make, I'm open for that right now.
Thank you very, very much, Cameron. That was a very good summary. It's quite easy to follow, actually.
That's good.
Does anybody have any questions for Cameron?
Cameron, Patrick here. I'm just wondering, you just mentioned how, you know, how probing the community and knowing exactly what, you know, what needs to be done is much work as actually getting the service ready. Do you have any insights on how the other communities elsewhere have done that, probing the community to know exactly, you know, in what direction they should be in terms of, you know, which services they should implement first and that kind of thing?
Okay, well, I will say, you know, one thing is, I think the projects that have been very focused on a particular scientific community of users have been more successful than communities that have been just trying to provide some generalized infrastructure. So, for example, I mean, LCG is very successful. They do have a working platform. They do have a working environment, because that platform is very specific to their needs. I mean, if you wanted to take what they've done and apply it to another community, it very well would not be sufficient. I mean, that's not to say that there hasn't been some success. I don't know, perhaps, you know, as detailed in terms of some of the more general grid infrastructures, you know, such as, say, DISA, or, you know, what's been doing in UK through eScience, or e.g. typically they try and provide some common set of tools, but quite often you're having to provide tools from more than one platform to meet the needs of the different community of users. So I think quite often most things are user-driven. I mean, if you build an infrastructure of general tools, you know, it's very likely that you could have missed the boat and won't, you know, really hit or target any user community. So, I mean, I think looking at specific needs of specific projects, and so there might be a variety of, I say, of workflow services. There might be a variety of storage management or data management services. And so having some of these core components available in a general infrastructure is important that then these other projects can build on. But I think quite often it means you can't support just one platform of services. It quite often has to involve multiple so that you can reach and meet the needs of different communities. And so in that sense, it needs to be driven by the specific projects. And so, I mean, I think certainly the way that, you know, CANARIE has been going with the network-enabled platform projects of really going out to specific domains is very important and crucial, because it helps to drive that. I mean, at the same point, I know here the key is, I mean, through those projects, there's been many shortfalls and shortcomings that have been identified on some common services and tools that would be very helpful to enable projects like these. And so I think there's a bit of balance on both that needs to take place. And that certainly a user-driven approaches are likely to be more successful, although you have to be careful that you don't tailor yourself to just one community, that different communities will have different needs.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Cameron, this is Jim Roche speaking. This is a great report, very comprehensive, very broad. I didn't see much in the way of discussion of storage services. You might not consider that middleware, but do you have any comments on storage?
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I didn't necessarily... So, a lot of storage itself and availability is probably becoming more familiar, say, within the cloud space now because of, Amazon S3 storage or other things where you have basically some repositories out there in the cloud. You could say you might not necessarily know where data is being stored exactly, but a place where you can go and store that data. And so I'd say some of the key things here is, with that, is it's always data location and data processing and keeping things close together. If you have wide separation between where the processing happens and where the data is, you're going to be spending a lot of time moving that data. I mean, tools such as, IRODs and SRB that I mentioned are, kind of meant on helping to manage and replicate data in such environments. I think quite often, there's I think many advantages to more, open interface public storage facilities. In private, within the High Performance Computing Consortium across Canada, certainly each has some large data storage needs to meet some of those users. I think data movement and processing, even within that, is still a very significant problem. It's probably one of the biggest problems is handling is the movement of data affiliated with the processing that occurs. That's typically one of the biggest challenges. And so, while I probably don't have too much more detail to offer on perhaps efforts of public storage services out there beyond S3 at this point, I think the key aspect is this is just always simply going to be a very difficult problem, regardless of the tools or technologies that are in place.
And anybody else have a question? Okay. Cameron, thank you very much for providing us with the overview here. Much appreciated. Everybody's kind of had very thoughtful faces on, so don't interpret the lack of questions as lack of interest.
Right, yeah, no problem there. And I guess if you need me at another meeting or other further questions, just let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.